Hey, what is going on, guys? This is CodedSteele, and I'm back again with another App Inventor tutorial. Guys, this is probably the most important App Inventor tutorial that I have done so far. So, yeah, basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be accessing a web database. So I'm going to teach you guys how to write to a web database and how to read from a web database. So if you guys have ever wondered, how can I make my app store stuff on the internet and then another user can access it, this is the video you guys are going to want to watch. So without further ado, then let's actually get started with the app. So what we're going to do is today I'm going to introduce you guys to a few new components here. First new component is going to be the list view component. I know we haven't done this, and this will probably be the only video I ever use the list view component because if I'm being perfectly honest, I really do not like it. It is pretty poorly designed component in my opinion, but that's just my opinion, and you guys will probably see why in just a minute. Oh, and as a note, the list view component will be changing in a new version of App Inventor that they are actually releasing, I believe, this Thursday. So it's possible after they make this improvement, maybe the list view component will become a lot better. I'm not entirely sure on this. I still probably won't use it ever again, but just so you guys know, you're going to have to reinstall a new app AI companion component and all of that stuff. But if you're watching this video in the long distant future, then obviously this isn't going to apply to you guys because you guys are going to install the latest versions of everything anyway. So anyways, not to waste any more time, let's get back to the tutorial here. So what I did was I dragged this list view component in. Alright, so it's kind of straightforward. And then we're going to drag in, not a text box quite yet, we're going to drag in a horizontal arrangement, and the horizontal arrangement is going to take up the whole width of the parent, and it's going to be, I'm going to do right aligned, and basically the reason I'm doing that is so that every component I drag in will be right aligned, just like that. So I'm going to put that in, and then I'm going to put this text box in. Sweet. Alright, worked pretty well. And then I'm going to drag in one more horizontal arrangement, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make it fill the parent, and then I'm going to do right aligned. And then I'm going to drag in a spinner. I don't think we've covered spinners either. I was going to do it in the Ohm's Law tutorial videos that I did before, but I figured, what the heck, I'll just kind of skip over those tutorials and just kind of show you guys how to use it in this one, which is fine. So I think this is everything that I had set up. Oh no, it's not. Duh, you got to come down here and we got to add in a tiny web database. And that should be everything that I need for this video. I'm just going to change this to web. So you guys know this is a web-based tutorial. That's what we're trying to cover here. And I'm going to change text for button 1 just to store, and then change the hint. Where's the hint for the button? Oh, that's for the text box. What am I saying? There's no hint for a button. Alright, and that should be good to go, I'm hoping. Yep, that should be everything. So now we have to get into the real meat of this as to how do we make it work the way we want to make it work. Well, it's pretty straightforward, honestly, but we'll get to that in a second of why it is straightforward. First thing we're going to do is we're going to add in the screen1.initialize component. And just so you guys know, I wanted to build this tutorial from scratch to kind of show you guys what I did, because I think it's a lot better for actually teaching a tutorial is for me to just build it so you guys can follow right along. But I do have this tutorial. I pre-built it and I did pre-test this app because when you're teaching something, it's the best thing to do is to be prepared. Last video I kind of winged it almost when I built my little canvas thing that just drew random pixels everywhere. I kind of winged that and I didn't really test it too much prior to making the video, and I think it probably showed a little bit maybe, but on this one I'm a lot more prepared and I know more of exactly what I got to do. So if I flop back and forth between videos, just to understand that that's what I'm doing. I'm kind of looking at what I did in the previous app that I made. Anyways, let's carry on. Whenever we initialize the screen, what we want to do first of all is we want to create the spinner object. And the reason we do that is because the spinner doesn't know what to be. I have to set the elements for it. I can set the elements here, just so you guys are aware. There's two places you can set elements for a spinner. You could set the elements here by typing in elements from string. I can type in sa-la-la and then put a comma and then type in another few elements. I can do something that way if I wanted to, and both of those elements would appear within the spinner whenever the app is called. I really don't like to do it that way because if you, well, I mean, it's good possibly to give it, this only gives it initial values though. So I figure it's probably better to do all of the initial value programming inside of the blocks editor, and then if I need to change an element at any time, or if I needed to add an element to a spinner on the fly, I can do that from the blocks component, as where you cannot do that from this. So I just think it's good programming practice to do it from the blocks component, do most of the stuff you can from the blocks component instead of actually giving it initial values. So anyway, that's kind of my spiel on that. Let's continue with what we're doing here. First thing I need to mention is this spinner. When I say set spinner 1.elements2, this elements here, I think it'll tell you, returns a list of text elements to be picked from. So this is a variable called a list. And I think we've discussed lists before, so it shouldn't be anything new for you guys, hopefully. But I have to make this a list, obviously, just like what I said. And then I'm going to add 2 text tags to it. So we're going to duplicate this text tag, and both of these text tags are just going to be store and then retrieve, which I think I spelled correctly. I'm not sure, but it looks like it's spelled correctly to me, which is good enough. So we have store and retrieve. Now, so whenever we build this app, there will be a spinner, which a spinner is actually, think of it as like a drop-down list. When I click on it, it's going to display a list of items that are within my spinner or my drop-down list, and I can select one of those elements, which are actually, they have it really weird. They have it set up with what's called a radio button, which if you guys don't know what radio buttons are, I'll show you those in a little bit, but when I actually demo the app. But anyways, they have them controlled from radio buttons, which I kind of found bizarre. I don't know. That's just me, I guess. Anyways, set the spinner 1.elements to make a list, store and retrieve. So now we'll have store and retrieve components for our screen. I think that's all I had to do. Yeah, that's all I did for that. And then the next thing I did was I initialized 3 global variables. And these global variables are a few different things here. One of them is, so we have the list, and then we have what's called the tag, and then the num. So let me kind of explain what these are going to do. Num, we're going to initialize to 0. Tag, we're going to initialize to something. And the list, what did I do with the list? Oh, I just, created an empty list. So this will create an empty list. It's a good thing to do because you're telling App Inventor that I want to use this variable to create a list. And then that way in the future, when I want to say add an item to the list, I can just plug the variable in and then say what item I want to add to the list. If we don't do that, if we assign it a text variable, App Inventor will throw an error at us and say, you know, this variable is not a list, so I can't really add anything to it. So in this case, I don't want it to have any values at first. I just want it to be a list. So put aside a space in memory to be a list, and just don't get surprised when I say add an item to yourself, because you're a list, and a list is supposed to have multiple items in it. So that's just kind of what we're doing. We're just reserving a space in memory for it. And then their tag, I just picked kind of a, I don't know, I picked what's called, I just called stored 0. So that's just kind of what I typed in there. You guys can type something else, whatever you want to do, but I do recommend typing a number in there, and you guys will see why. So you could name it num0, your name and then a 0, whatever you want to do. It doesn't matter, but do make sure you end it with a 0, and like I said, I'll explain why I do that in a little bit. So the next thing we need to do, now that all of our variables are initialized, we need to do stuff when the button is clicked. So what we do then, obviously, is we add in when a button is clicked button. So what we've got to do for this is we got to say when a button is clicked, what we're actually going to do is we're going to store whatever's in the text field. So to do that, to store whatever's in the text field, we actually have to call our tiny web database component, which, yay, we're finally calling it. So this is a pretty big deal. This is it, guys. We're finally using a tiny web database, which is what so many of you guys requested. So anyways, what are we going to store? Well, here's the thing. The tag is my tag variable. Hopefully that makes sense to you guys. That's why I created the tag. So we're going to say get, and we're going to say my tag. So I'm going to say whatever the text is of my variable, that's going to be the tag. The tag is basically a variable name. What do I store it under in the memory? And then whenever I want to retrieve that, I just have to type in whatever the tag was, and it'll pull the value out of the web database memory and bring it to me in the app. So that's all that is. And then the value to store in this case, not going to be button. It's going to be whatever's in the text box. So my text box one.text right here, component. I'm going to pull whatever's in the text box at that moment in time when this button is clicked, and I'm going to store that in my web database. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. And then we've got to do something else. After that, we've got to increment our tag, our num variable. And the reason we do that is because the next time we click the button, we don't want them to store another value under the same tag. Why? Because if we did, then that information we just stored would get written right over the top of. So if it has the same, if your tag has the same variable name each time the button is called, it's going to store it under the same variable. So if I click this button 5 times, I would only have one thing stored in memory because they're all stored under the same tag. So it would overwrite itself. So if I typed in App Inventor and then typed in the number 67, 67 is what we would see when we called it again if we didn't write anything else, and App Inventor would get written right over the top of. So I think that probably makes sense to you guys because you guys are pretty smart. So that's just kind of how that works. Alright, so that's cool. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to go ahead, and I need to add an item to my list. So I initialize the list up here, and all we're going to do is we're going to say, blah, 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 blah. What? List, picker and index and list, select item list. Now, what did I do here? Add items to list. Where is that? Add items to list. Oh, duh. I was scrolled down too far. Okay. That's what I was looking for. Add an item to the list. Our list is this up here, this empty list. So we are going to add that in. We're going to say get the list. So that's our list. And then the item we're going to add. So the item we're going to add is actually the tag. And the reason that is going to be the tag, so we're going to say, again, I can just copy this and paste it in here. And the reason that's the tag is because whenever we store this and we want to bring it out of memory at a certain point in time, we're going to bring it out of memory by using the tag. So whenever I click on a certain component of my list, it's going to search for that in the web database, and it's going to pull the information out of that tag and place it in the text box. So that's what's going to happen eventually. But yeah, for now, that's what we're doing here. So the get global the tag. That's good. All right. The next thing we need to do is change our stored variable to a new variable. So kind of how we got to do that is we've got to call this. We got to say text. I want replace all text. Segment replacement. Yep, this is what I wanted. So in here I've got to do set. After that I got to do set global my tag, and I got to replace all the text. And what am I going to replace all the text in? I'm going to replace all of the text in the tag variable. So basically this is what this is going to do. I'm going to go into the tag variable. I'm going to look for a segment of text that exists inside of that variable. And what segment of text am I going to look for? Well, it's not really a text we're going to look for. We're going to look for a number. Alright, so I'm hoping this makes sense to you guys. What we're doing is we're pulling the tag out of memory. That's this, stored 0 initially. Okay? And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to look for a specific segment in stored 0, which global num 0. So we're looking for a 0 in stored 0. Well, what do you know? There's a 0 right there. And then we're going to replace. What are we going to replace the 0 with? Well, we're going to replace the 0 with a 1. But you got to think about that. Okay, what? Am I just going to drag a 1 and just put a 1 in here and then place it directly in the replacement? No, I'm not going to do that. Why? Because each time the button gets clicked, it's just going to constantly reassign it to 1. Sure, that might be nice. I might get my 0 index stored, but my 1's going to keep getting written over the top of. So what we actually have to do is make it dynamic to where it changes every time, so we could have 5, 6, 7, 8, 200 things stored in our database. So how do we do that? We actually have to do that by doing a little bit of math. And it's just addition, it's not a big deal. We do this, we say add. And we just say copy this and paste that down here. Nice and easy, straightforward. And we change that to a 1. So each time, now you guys can see that each time we go through here, the number is going to constantly change. So the next time we go through here, the first time it's going to be a 0 that's going to get stored. The next time we go through, it's going to be a 1 that gets stored. The next time it's going to be 2, 3, 4, 5, on and on and on and on until the web database cannot store any more information. So that's kind of what's going on here with this stuff. Just so you guys are aware too, this video is just going to take however long it takes for me to do all of it. I'm not going to chop it up or anything like that. So I'm sorry if this runs a little long. If you guys have any complaints, please leave a comment below and I'll split them up in the future. But for now, we're just going to go as long as I need to go to get this done. So, alright, that's cool now. This should all be handled, I think. No, it's not all done yet. There's still a little bit more to do. And the last thing I think we have to do, I'll have to check my notes again, is to set the list view elements to the list. Yeah, that's what it is. The list. There we go. You guys might be wondering why I don't just change the list components as I'm going along, because if this is a list, I can go ahead and I can just append stuff onto this list. The reason I don't do that is because I tried doing that before and I actually got an error from App Inventor when I did it that way. So this was the way I got it to work, is I actually just store it in a variable outside of the elements and then just constantly and dynamically reassign it to the list. So I know that's one of those quirky things that you just have to kind of find a way that makes your app work the way it's supposed to work, and then you just kind of deal with it. So that was what I kind of did. I just found a way that I knew this would work, or I tested things until I found a way of doing it that actually worked, and that was the way I stuck with. So you guys can try this. Your experience may vary. Maybe you can actually just say that this is the list and pull the list view dot elements blah 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 and then do it that way. More power to you if you can get it to work on your end, but I had a problem on my end. That's why I'm not doing it. Alright, cool enough. So I think at this point we are done with the button programming. Don't quote me on that till I check. Button 1.click, add items, list view to, I should stay consistent and put that there. I think that's where I had that. Oh, we're not done. Oh, that's right. And we got to do one other thing. We got to do set global num to this. And all that is for incrementing the variable. So this doesn't actually increment the variable. Remember, this just increments the replacement. So I actually have to change it to where this is a 1, and then a 2, and then a 3, and then a 4. So that's just necessary. This is our incrementation. Any of you guys who've ever done C++ programming or any other type of programming, this is I++ or G++ or whatever your variable is, plus plus. Just add 1. It's an incrementer variable, just a placeholder to allow you to loop. So that's all this is doing, is just something that allows you to loop. Alright, cool enough. Now these two components are coded. The next thing we need to code is the actual web database here. Well, actually, we're just going to drag this in. I don't think we're going to really code it yet. I'm going to code my spinner because that's an easy thing to do. So we have to code our spinner. And actually, what I'm going to do here, and actually, I'm not going to do it there. What am I talking about? I'm going to go back to here, and I'm going to say spinner1 set selection to store by default. So this just means that by default the spinner will have the store command selected in the spinner selector. So that's all we're doing with that. And then now these are officially done. My apologies for not getting that done right away. But now that's all done. Okay, now the spinner selection. To do our spinner selection the way I have it, I dragged in an if block and then I added an else statement. So what I did here was I checked to see if store was selected. And if store was selected, at least I think that's what I did, right? Did I check to see if store? Yeah, I checked to see if store was selected. And then if store was selected, then I did a set of commands. If it wasn't, then, you know, whatever. So here's the thing. If store is selected, then store is selected. But if store is not selected, then the only other alternative is retrieve must have been selected. So that's why I can use an if-else statement here, structure here, is because it's either store or retrieve. So if it's not store, then retrieve is definitely selected because those are our only two options. So I would need to obviously cascade this down a lot further with else-ifs if I had more selections in my spinner, but I don't. So I don't need to worry about it. So what we do here is I said if the spinner selection, come on, give me my, there we go, spinner.getSelection is equal to store, and actually it'd be proper programming to do it this way. You always put your variable first and then put your thing you're checking. It's just kind of convention. So if the selection in the spinner is the store string, then we want to do something. And what do we want to do? Well, we just want to do one set of things, honestly. We want to set list view, visibility, and text button visibility, or the button visibility. And that's all I want to do. Where's my button not visible? Button dot visible. There it is. Set button one dot visible. So, and then in this case, it's going to be one of these logic blocks. So whenever store is selected, I want my button to be visible and my list view, oh, whoa, 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 dragging off the screen all weird kind of. Alright, and my list view to not be visible. And the reason why is because, okay, thank you. Alright, that was nice of them. Okay. Alright, whoa, I had all kinds of goofy things going on there. So I want my button to be visible when store is selected and my list view to be invisible. So, and then the opposite to be true when retrieve is, whoa, what the heck? That was right. Okay. So here's what's going to happen. Whenever the store is selected from the spinner, the button's going to be visible and the list view is going to be invisible because the list view is our way of retrieving the variable data and our button is just the way of storing it to the database. Okay? That's why we did that way. So, and then we did the same thing, button 1 not visible to false, list view 1 not visible to true. So the list will become visible whenever retrieve is selected. Cool enough. Alright. So that should be it for the spinner. Yep. So you just got 2 more things left to code. Awesome. Nice. So we're moving along pretty well, even though this video is getting long. Alright, tinywebdb 1. So what I wanted to do with this now is this has got value. So this literally means whenever a value is retrieved, we're going to do something. So where are we retrieving a value? We're actually retrieving a value from here. So when listview1.afterPicking, which means after you picked an element from the list, we actually need to pull the selection, right? I think that's it. The variable returns the last selected text. Returns the text last selected in the list view. Yes, this is what I want. So whenever the user selects a text string from the list view, we want to. This is the variable that is going to be stored in, and all we're going to do is we're going to say call tinywebdb get value. Awesome enough. All right, and that's all that goes in the list view, I think. Right? Yep, that's all I put in it over there. Nice. All right. So basically, what that means is, whenever we're trying to retrieve something, we're going to retrieve whatever the user selected from the list, which will be the variable name that we stored it under, and then we're going to attempt to retrieve that information from the database. And hopefully, we're going to succeed. And if we succeed, what's actually going to happen is, if this actually succeeds, we get a success. It's going to say, it's going to call the getValue function, which indicates that a getValue server request has succeeded. So literally, what that means is we successfully retrieved information, whether it's an empty string or it is full of characters or something like that. We don't care. All we know is that we successfully retrieved information. If we fail to receive information, which means we cannot connect to the server, and that can be for a multitude of reasons. You're not connected to the internet, you're a bunch of stuff, whatever it may even be. Then what's actually going to happen is this web service error will get called. And if that does, you can maybe add a notifier or something to your app, like we've discussed in previous tutorials. I think I've discussed the notifier component before, at least I'm pretty sure I did. You could do, error unable to connect to your database, or error unable to connect to the internet, or something like that. So you could put this in. But I'm pretty sure our thing is, and I'm pretty confident that our stuff is going to work, so I'm not going to add that. And the other thing is value storage. Obviously, whenever we call the store value and we successfully connect to the database and store information, we could call this and make something happen. But yeah, I really don't see a reason for us to need to call that. So we're just going to stick with this stuff. So awesome. We're heading in the right direction now. tinywebdb1.getValue. So what are we going to do with this stuff? This thing? Very simple. All we're going to do is we're just going to say textbox1 set textbox1.text. Where are you at? I can honestly just type this. Box1.text. There we go. See, I should honestly just get in the practice of doing that. And you guys should too, because if you do, it means you actually understand the programming a lot more and you understand the syntax. And that means you're actually getting a very good understanding of how everything works in App Inventor, which is good, because if you're going to write your own apps, you really need to understand everything that's going on. So if everything worked out, this should mirror my other app, and it looks like it does. Let me just make sure. Button 1, true, false. Yep, it looks like everything pans out. So if it does, then you guys should be able to do a build on this and then download it to your tablet or phone, and you should have a successful database. So let me show you guys what that looks like. I'm not going to waste any more of your time. We're just going to go straight into my app that I built here. So this is it. This is what you should get if you're successfully install the app and everything works just fine for you. You should get something that looks like this. So what we can do in here is I can type in something. I'm just going to type in web and say web okay or something like that. And when I hit, and actually I should show you guys this before we do anything. When I call retrieve, there's nothing there at first. And the reason why is because there's nothing in our list right now. We haven't put anything in it. It's an empty list. So nothing exists inside of our list view. That's why we can't see it. So don't get alarmed if you see that. That's exactly how it's supposed to work. So I'm going to do web OK, and I'm going to store that information. Now that I click the store button, my stuff better exist somewhere, hopefully. So I can go then back here and now to retrieve, and oh yeah, look at that, we have something that populated in our list now. Now if I click on this, it should pull the information back out from the web database. So pretty freaking sweet. I gotta, just so you guys know I'm not pulling your leg, I don't have a standard database in here. I don't have a tiny database in here, and I don't have it to where it's assigning it to any variables in the code at all. We're pulling this stuff directly off of the internet. And actually, just to prove it to you guys, I'll show you where this information gets stored on the internet, because it's pretty handy to know this. So this information actually gets stored in a specific location that you specify in your app. And what did we specify in here? This is actually the default. We did not change it. We actually stored it in AppInventor tiny whatever garbage. So if we type in app, which I have already been here before, AppInventor tiny blah blah blah, you guys can see we are in a test database service. Like I said, I'm using the default service. I did not create my own web database or anything like that. But I can click on this get value, and I can type in whatever my tag was that was on the screen. And if you guys remembered, is stored 0. Alright? And if I click get value, look at that, guys. If you guys remember, I typed in web OK on my tablet, and you guys can look at that right here. Web OK is what it pulled off of the server. And I can go straight back to my web service. Web OK is stored there. Freaking sweet. And just to prove to you guys, I'm going to show you guys something. Stored 1. Oh, it actually did store. Oh, should bleep that out or something. I was testing something earlier. I'm surprised my variable still exists in this database. But we're going to write over the top of stored 1. And I'm going to write in hello world right now. And I'm going to say store. And now if I type in stored 1, it's going to refresh. And there's my hello world text that I put right there on the screen. And just to show you guys what happens when there's nothing stored, hopefully there's nothing in my stored to variable. And there might be something stored in it. I don't know. It's popping up with something weird. But I'm going to populate my stored to variable too with hello hello YouTube. Sure, let's do that. So I'm going to hit store, and then I can just click the refresh button. Yes, continue. I want to hello YouTube. There you go, guys. That's exactly what I stored from my tablet. So that is how to use a web database and how to store stuff in a web database, how to access stuff in a web database. You guys do need to keep in mind this stuff, though. If you read here on the main page of the web database, it says that this is a demonstration web service and is designed to work with App Inventor for Android, blah, 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 web database, blah, blah, blah. This service is only a demo. The database will store at most 250 entries. Adding entries beyond that will cause the oldest entries to be deleted. Okay, so be aware of this. I think this 250 entries here is everybody's 250 entries. It's not just your 250 entries. So you guys do need to keep that in mind, that if a lot of people are using App Inventor at any given time, and they go ahead and store stuff, eventually your crap's going to get written over. So just so you guys are aware of that, that's just the limitation of this. If you guys wanted to make it to where your stuff doesn't get written over, you're actually going to need to create your own database, which I probably will show you guys how to do in a future tutorial, because it actually requires installing a few programs and running a Python script. So anyways, that's how to use a web database and how you can store stuff in a web database. And yeah, guys, definitely you should try it out. It's really cool, and you can create some pretty freaking sweet apps, which we probably will be doing in the near future, like a web login, which I am scheduling, probably being the next tutorial that we cover. So anyways, that's all I have for you guys for this tutorial. And one more comment I want to make. We're a ways off from completing my series of App Inventor tutorials. We probably got maybe 10 or so more tutorials that I want to do, kind of just showing you guys the rest of the functionality of this. But after that, I'm not really sure what you guys maybe want me to do next or what you want me to cover next. I was thinking about going over some Python tutorials, but if there's some like electronics videos or stuff that you guys want me to cover, or some physics or math or whatever, please feel free to leave a comment below and let me know what you think the next thing I should give a tutorial on, and I will let you guys know whether I am qualified to teach you that stuff or whether I would need to brush up on it before I could actually teach you guys it. But anyways, that's all I have for you guys for this tutorial. Please stay tuned for a future tutorial because I'm sure it's going to be pretty freaking sweet. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys in a future tutorial.